Ferrari is once again in difficulty. The fifth round of the 2025 Formula One season leaves no escape for the Prancing Horse, once again disappointing on a difficult track, but with fewer compromises compared to the Bahrain International Circuit. And so, we are once again commenting on the same result second and fourth row, where the red car seems to have settled. And the new floor? It hasn't made the expected difference after the Sakhir debut. Let's analyze the telemetry comparison between the poleman Max Verstappen's lap and Charles Leclerc's fourth place with a deficit of 0.376 seconds. It wasn't a good Ferrari as one might have expected, especially until the end of Q2, with both drivers encountering major difficulties in the first sector, unable to properly activate the tires in the optimal window, especially at the front. And this represents a huge problem on a track like Jeddah. As highlighted on Friday in the analysis of the second free practice session, the characteristics of the Saudi street circuit, namely extremely high speeds, tight corners, walls just inches away, require a precise front end, capable of guaranteeing quick, sharp, and repeated direction changes. Therefore, the front end must be stiffened, inevitably sacrificing some grip in slow corners. Indeed, as seen from the telemetry data, this is where the red car struggles. While the SF-25 is quite good in the fast sections, in the lower speed section, located precisely in the first sector, the car struggles to heat up the tires and rotate as it should. It is between turns 1 and 2 that Charles Leclerc loses a significant 0.265 seconds to Max Verstappen's Red Bull. The reason is twofold and can be quickly explained. A corner entry affected by understeer, which forces Charles Leclerc to carry less speed through the corner. A less aggressive line compared to the Dutchman, who cuts the first curb more, travels a shorter distance, and is better positioned for the direction change. Brian Bozzi has repeatedly emphasized how problematic this section is. Even in turn 4, the SF-25's issues are confirmed. Charles Leclerc takes the corner with 6 km/h less. He has to hesitate on the throttle to avoid losing the rear. In the following section, between turns 5 and 12, car number 16 remains relatively stable at the rear, and Charles Leclerc handles the direction changes with determination and fluidity. But even here, Red Bull has the upper hand. It manages to generate more downforce at very high speeds, allowing Max Verstappen to keep the throttle down longer, while the Monegasque is forced to lift off by a good 20 to 30%. By the end of the first sector, the gap between Charles Leclerc's SF-25 car and Max Verstappen's RB21 is 0.350 seconds, practically identical to the final gap at the finish line. This confirms the difficulties of the Italian car in the slower section, and the competitiveness, however, in the 2/3 of the track at higher speeds, where the Monegasque car holds up well compared to the Milton Keynes machine. Arriving at turn 13, the elevated hairpin, Charles Leclerc pushes hard and manages to bring 10 km/h more in entry speed, then goes with the throttle earlier, with the car still in the process of settling. At turn 16, however, he experiences a slight snap at the rear, forcing him to barely touch the brake and slightly lift the throttle on exit, but without a significant impact on the lap time. In the rest of the lap, top speed values are almost identical, confirming that, in today's Saudi Arabian Grand Prix, overtaking will require being significantly faster at the exits of key corners, rather than relying solely on top speed. It should also be noted that the DRS zone and the slipstream will certainly contribute to overtakes, as Jeddah usually sees these maneuvers frequently. In Q3, Charles Leclerc gave his best with the available package, which mechanically does not guarantee optimal performance in the slower sectors. The comparison with Lewis Hamilton highlights even more the difficulties in the slower section, namely in turns 1, 2, where the Englishman has to brake many meters earlier to rotate better, and even then he still faces problems. In the rest of the lap, Lewis Hamilton's lack of confidence is evident. He loses from half a tenth to a tenth and a half in every fast corner and direction change compared to the Monegasque, carrying much less speed through the corners. -7, -17, -13, -4 km/h in the fastest sections. The qualifying tally is ruthless. 5-1 in favor of the Monegasque. The 7-time Formula One world champion still has a lot of work to do to reach his teammates' level in qualifying pace. Charles Leclerc's 4th place and Lewis Hamilton's 7th reflected the current standings. Lando Norris's mistake allowed the Monegasque to maintain his position in the second row, meeting the Maranello team's expectations. However, the less positive news for the Italian side was that 3 different teams, Red Bull, McLaren, and Mercedes, were ahead. Frederic Vasseur regularly stated that the margins were reduced, which was true, but they were also consistent. Overall, Charles Leclerc lost most of his final gap, 0.376 seconds from Max Verstappen, 0.366 seconds from Oscar Piastri, and 0.263s from Lando Norris, in the first sector of the Jeddah circuit, as Frederic Vasseur pointed out. It was also noted that the top 9 positions in the final standings matched exactly with the top 9 positions in the first sector, the most selective part of the track. This was where the difference needed to be made. Charles Leclerc had hoped for something more, especially after seeing Lando Norris's McLaren crash into the barriers at turn 4. But he eventually had to admit that realistically, going beyond 4th place was not possible. The Ferrari driver admitted that he couldn't be happy with the 4th place but was pleased with how he drove and the fact that he had understood how to extract the car's potential. He also mentioned that, unfortunately, this was the best they could achieve at the moment, citing a lack of grip to enter some corners with the same speed as their competitors. The Monegasque added that this aspect needed to be analyzed. While hope for the first podium of the season remained, it was clear that more than what had been seen so far would be needed. Looking ahead to the next day, Charles Leclerc didn't expect miracles, but felt a podium position could be within reach if they could get off to a good start. The race pace observed in Friday's brief long runs confirmed Ferrari as the 3rd force, behind McLaren and Mercedes. However, there was no data on performance degradation, since no one had managed to complete more than 10 laps due to the red flag caused by Yuki Tsunoda's crash. Frederic Vasseur emphasized that it would be interesting to see the race pace for both Ferrari cars. The Ferrari team boss mentioned that no one had been able to do real long runs yet, but since the start of the 2025 Formula 1 season, they had shown more competitiveness in the race than in qualifying. The Frenchman added that they needed to be ready to seize every opportunity the race would offer, as overtaking was possible on this track, and tonight they would focus on preparing for all the possible scenarios that could arise during the race. Although it may seem surprising, given Lewis Hamilton's position, his 7th place finish was actually better than expected. After finishing the final free practice session in 12th place, making it to Q3 had been uncertain, and the goal was achieved with just 0.07 of an advantage over Alexander Albon. Lewis Hamilton stated that considering how much they had struggled in free practice, it had been a respectable qualifying. He acknowledged that they were not where they wanted to be, but he felt more comfortable in the car, indicating they were heading in the right direction. The Briton noted that his only lap in Q3 wasn't great, but since overtaking was possible on this track, the goal for the race was to make up ground.